Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
If they're truly a pro-life leader, they should be, speaking to both sides and calling it, like an umpire. They shouldn't be a partisan. It's a horrible thing. And some of these leaders are just such a disappointment to people that would call themselves pro-life, but understand, just telling people you can't have an abortion. That's going to do nothing. That's not the way we win that battle. The way we win that battle is by showing people we love and showing people we really care about people. Do you really think that if somebody watches me and I treat, the homeless guy terrible and I treat this person terrible, do you think that they're really going to believe that I care about that unborn child in the womb? No. So we have to be good witnesses, and we can't be involved in politics if we're going to be pro-life leaders. And that's where I think that's why Illinois is probably the most pro-abort state in the nation, is because we've had the worst pro-life leadership.
Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy and so much more, because our guest today is running for the Illinois Supreme Court. And of course, some of you don't know, you would think, oh, really? You run to be on the Illinois Supreme Court? Yes, sir. Yes, you do. And they used to say, gays, guns, God, and abortion. Every election, that's what it comes down to 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Okay, but not so much gays now. Maybe we'll talk about that, but certainly guns and God and abortion and crime and pensions. We'll be talking about all those issues, so don't go away. And this could be an immensely important election. We're talking to Mark Curran, who's the GOP nominee in the 2nd District, running in the 2nd District for the 2nd District Illinois Supreme Court seat. And that is an open seat now. And also running in this election day in the 3rd District, running for this fall November 8 election, is Justice Michael Burke, now running in the 3rd District. He's on the 2nd District. He holds a 2nd District seat now. The short of it is, folks, Democrats have the majority in the Illinois Supreme Court. These two seats, 2nd and 3rd, viewed as purple seats, open seats. If the Republicans were to win both those seats, the Republican Party would have the majority of in the Illinois Supreme Court for the first time in 60 years.
Sure.
Dobbs, what does that decision say, and what are the implications for Illinois?
Well, as I mentioned to you before, when we were talking before we got on the air, that Supreme Court justices and people running for other judiciary positions can't say how they'd rule or even tip their hand so much as to how they'd rule on a case that may be before them. So I wouldn't be able to say a lot about Dobbs other than the first 15 weeks. I think they sent it back that there's not, according to the Mississippi case that went up to the Supreme Court, there's no right to an abortion in the Constitution. And Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided. And I think that even the liberal justices over the years said that it was wrongly decided. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it was wrongly decided. So it will go back to the courts, then it'll be up to the legislature to draft bills that deal with this. Illinois already has a statute in effect that essentially allows abortion at any moment in time, all the way, up to partial birth.
So you're saying in Illinois, there really shouldn't be much effect because the law that they have could be challenged, but it's unlikely to be upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. That is a challenge. It appears that this law that Illinois has for abortion is consistent with what we now know about the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, as to their views of what's legal and what isn't as to abortion. Is that
right?
correct?
I think so. I mean, Justice Scalia isn't around anymore, but that's kind of what he had always said about abortion, is that he didn't think it was permissible under the U.S. Constitution. It was a states' rights issue, but it very well could be completely consistent with the state constitution. So it's going to go back to the states, and I think you're right that a lot of states are going to come to that conclusion that they're going to have a right to an abortion.
Right. So is it an issue in this race?
Just the
between you and your opponent?
right. I
Elizabeth
mean, I've
Rochford?
identified as pro-life. She's identified as pro-choice. I think that it's going to be an issue to the extent that the left, they always try those issues that you mentioned before, abortion and guns and the rest, that the left always tries to use those as wedge issues to, get their base all fired up and to come after you and just smoke screen as to all the other things that we really should be talking about that are really important. So I'm sure they're going to make an issue of that. I expect it.
Well, you are a devout Catholic. Does that, well, number one, is that
Right.
right? You're a devout Catholic. Have I got that right?
I'm a Catholic. I subscribe to the teachings of the church.
Okay. Does that affect your views as to, well, the current views that you have about abortion?
Right. So I would say that it does not at all. I mean, essentially, everything that I believe is consistent with natural law. In natural law, we know from the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote that our rights are based in nature's law and nature's God, and everything flows from that. So that's really the centerpiece of what my belief system. It's not, I'm not going to be pulling out the catechism to see what the church says about anything. That's an absurdity. But I'm going to use the same backdrop that the founding fathers used, and that's natural law.
And what does natural law say about abortion?
Well, natural law would say that life is the result of a woman and a man coming together, and from that a life is produced, and that an abortion would be a wrongful destruction of that life.
Taking of a life, which in your
Yeah.
view should not be permitted by the law, right?
Right. Well, once again, we go back to not permitted by God's moral law, but Caesar's law is a different thing. I'm not going to know how I'm going to rule on any of these things unless we look at it in contrast or in conjunction with the Illinois Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, all of those other things. So I'm not going to do that because, number one, the canons say that I shouldn't be saying how I'd comment on such cases that maybe come before the Illinois Supreme Court. But secondly, I'm not going to do that because essentially that violates the objectivity that I intend to bring to the position.
So when you approach a case, or if you get elected to this position and you become a justice, that's what we call the folks who are on the Illinois Supreme Court, is that correct?
Right, yes.
Not judges, but justices, right?
Right.
If you become a justice on the Illinois Supreme Court, you get what lawyers call a case in controversy that comes to you, right?
Right.
So the case presents the facts. The lawyers present that in their briefs.
Right.
They argue that perhaps orally to you.
Right.
You read, you listen to what they say the law is, what the Constitution says. You go back, you reflect, you speak with your 6 colleagues, and then a decision comes out of that. What have I left out of that process?
Nothing. That's exactly it. So, Supreme Court justices, there's 3 branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So essentially, the law is going to be drafted by the legislative, and then the executive is going to sign it, and the judicial, if it's challenged, is going to rule on the constitutionality of that law. So we don't just give opinions ad hoc. This is the way your law needs to say in order to be constitutional. There has to be, as you said, there has to be a case and a controversy. So we're not going to give guidance to the legislature or to the governor as to how to write the law, but we may be asked to call to rule upon that law at some point in time.
But philosophically, if you could put the law aside for a moment now, if you had your druthers, if you weren't on the court, and you're just like Mark Curran talking to Jeff Berkowitz, we're having a conversation, okay? And I said to you, what are you trying to do? I hear that you of course don't want abortion because you think that's taking of a life. So does that mean, just as a person, not as a Supreme Court justice, that we should, as a society, try to ban abortion? Would that be effective? Or should we be doing something else?
Right. So, anybody that's followed me over the years, and I was a longtime sheriff of Lake County, Illinois, I was recently the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate in Illinois. They will tell you that I have not, targeted abortion as the only life issue. Uh-huh. I've always believed, as Cardinal Bernardine said, in a seamless garment, And Cardinal George talked about a consistent ethic of life. So I'm somebody that has called for jail and prison reform. I'm the only sheriff at the time that had ever spent a week in his own jail to say that people need second chances. I'm somebody that's been a leader on immigration reform. We should have had an immigration reform bill before, and then we wouldn't have wide open borders like there are now. I'm somebody that has worked with both sides on that. I'm somebody that believes in a preferential treatment to the poor. And as far as abortion goes, I see a lot of the right to life leaders, or some of the right to life leaders, as miserable failures, because they, as my old boss Jim Ryan said, if you're not willing to help the unwed mother raise that child, then you're really not pro-life. So it's not, simply about abortion. It's that consistent ethic of life. And so I don't think that the right to an abortion is ever going away. Okay, first of all, there's no way that all these states. So that's, the left is using that, to smokescreen. Number one, it's never going away. Number two, even if, places where it might be illegal, there's still going to be an underground market for abortion, and it'll still be provided. Do I want that? No. But what the real way we're going to win hearts and minds on that issue is by our love.
No, well, excuse me. When you said, do you want that no to underground abortions, what was the no to?
Yeah, you don't want to, that's a horrible scenario. You hope that people would never choose that. And I don't believe that abortion will ever be completely gone in the United States. But the only way we're really going to make inroads into that issue is by showing people it's not a rule that we just are following, for no real reason. It's because we love you. We love the unborn child. We love the mother. We love the father who may not have a say in that. And by showing people it's really, that's what it's really about, hearts and minds. That's what pro-life is. So if you're, what I encountered in the primary that I thought was absolutely disgusting was some of the pro-life leaders on the Republican that were involved in the Republican politics. And they shouldn't be involved on either side in politics. If they're truly a pro-life leader, they should be, speaking to both sides and calling it, like an umpire. They shouldn't be a partisan. That's a horrible thing. And some of these leaders are just such a disappointment to people that would call themselves pro-life, but understand, just telling people you can't have an abortion. That's going to do nothing. That's not the way we win that battle. The way we win that battle is by showing people we love and showing people we really care about people. Do you really think that if somebody watches me and I treat, the homeless guy terrible and I treat this person terrible, do you think that they're really going to believe that I care about that unborn child in the womb? No. So we have to be good witnesses, and we can't be involved in politics if we're going to be pro-life leaders. And that's where I think that's why Illinois is probably the most pro-abort state in the nation, is because we've had the worst pro-life leadership. They're way too intertwined with politics.
So, having said that, and we've started out by talking abortion. We're going to get to the other issues soon. Why are you running? Because it's not like you're saying you're a pro-lifer and you're ardently going out there and what you want to do is get on the court and then make sure abortion's illegal. You're not doing that. Why are you running to be on the Illinois Supreme Court?
Yeah, for people that have no faith and what have you, they mock it when I say that, essentially I'm running because I believed that the Lord wanted me to run. So he allowed me to see a lot of things, as a practicing attorney. Lake County, where I came from, had tremendous Masonic influence, and for Catholics, we can't become Freemasons. For others of Christian faith, they can't become Freemasons. So in Lake County, where that was essentially a requirement for the longest period of time, that
what was the requirement?
That you were both a Republican and a Freemason to be a judge way back, But the remnants of that still exist today. And when I saw that,
remnants of what?
Of that whole, Masonic little group where this is our guy. And I saw
it just Masonic, or who are they aligned with?
No, they were aligned. Well, they were aligned with the Republican Party, but now they're in both parties. Mm-hmm. No question about
Masons.
it. Right.
Is that what we call them? Masons?
Yes,
Freemasons?
Yes,
what do you call them?
No, that's what I call them.
Freemasons.
Exactly.
Freemasons, okay.
Right. So I saw one fellow that was running, and I saw that they were all circling for him. and wanted everybody else out of the way. And, God had, as I said before, had allowed me to see the wrongness of all these, of what a Masonic judiciary looked like when I started out as an attorney, and I just was prompted to run. And
So who was the one person you said who they all wanted?
I don't want to
Masons?
say,
You don't want to say
it's over.
in
Yeah.
the primary. Okay.
Yeah, the primary's over.
So those wounds have healed. You now expect your primary opponents to support you. Or
Do
are
I
you hoping?
expect them?
Do you expect, hope? What do you think?
Let's put it this way. We had no money.
Your campaign had no
I
money.
had $5,000. This, one candidate had, I've been told, close to $1 million. He had every single endorsement of townships and electeds and what have you. And he was on Fox News all the time. I didn't have a penny for advertising. I didn't have a single sign. I didn't have, there was only one precinct committeeman, I think, in all of the 5 counties that asked me to carry my literature.
Mm-hmm.
So, we beat them. We beat the establishment.
How'd you do it? You won by 1,500 votes. How'd you do it?
Right. I think that the fact that I had been a longtime sheriff for a long time, that the name meant a lot to a lot of people. It meant a lot to people in Lake County, but it also meant a lot in neighboring counties. I was somebody that had national exposure. I was somebody that, if you were to say who are the best known sheriffs in Illinois, people would say, well, Tom Dart and Mark Curran, just by virtue of the fact that I was somebody that was often on national news. I was leading.
Dart's Cook County sheriff.
Right, exactly.
You were the Lake County
Lake
sheriff.
County. So I think that people, the name, it's not just name, recognition, because you can have bad name recognition. The name recognition was a positive one, and that's how we beat them. We beat them with prayer warriors out there too.
We're not, even though if you're elected to the Illinois Supreme Court, of course, you are the justice for one of the 7 justices ruling on matters for the entire state of Illinois.
Right.
But you're not elected by people throughout the state of Illinois, are you?
No.
Who gets to vote for you or your opponent?
Right. So as you said, any case that goes before the Supreme Court will go potentially before all 7 justices. I will only be elected, or if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will be elected by people of Lake County, Kane County, McHenry County, Kendall County, and DeKalb County.
5 counties.
5 counties.
If you live in those areas, and if you're a registered voter in the general election, Democrat or Republican or whatever, you can vote. If you don't live in those 5 areas and you're not registered, you can't. Simple. Right. That's simple, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
But you mentioned, just small thing, maybe not. You said Catholics could not become Masons.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, it's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church that you excommunicate yourself from the Catholic Church, meaning, you should no longer participate in the sacraments because you're no longer a member of the Catholic Church.
Why? Why would the Catholics have that kind of?
Right. I don't want to turn this into a dialogue on
half a minute on it. Just tell me why.
Yeah. Let me just say, I'm not certain, but they've been at war with the Catholic Church, in different countries throughout the globe. I think there's been a whole bunch of encyclicals written by different popes over the years about Freemasonry, and the Church has taken a strong stance on it.
But you say it's broader. It's not just the Masons. You seem to think the Masons are aligned with the establishment.
Yeah, I think there's a deep. I think there's a deep state.
Together,
yeah, there's no question. There's a deep state, and there's a deep state.
They were aligned against you. You're saying in the
right, absolutely. In the deep state.
Why you in particular?
Why me in particular? Because I don't really have any. I've kind of, the road less traveled. I've kind of taken my own path, and I haven't really been somebody that could be pigeonholed. And I've built my own base.
You're a Republican, aren't you?
I am, but I was initially elected as a Democrat in 2006. And if you look at my numbers over the years, I have had substantially more votes than any other Republican in Lake County, and
because you were a Democrat before.
Well, no, despite the fact that if you break the numbers down even further, you'll see that I had less Republican voters, and I had more Democratic voters. And we know that based on the areas they came from than all the other candidates. So I had far more votes than all of them did in each of my sheriff elections, 10, 14, 18. And
Wait, you did, but you lost in 2018.
Right. I lost by 137 votes. Every other Republican lost by approximately 30,000.
Bad year for
It
Republicans.
was a real bad year.
But you almost survived.
So Democrats have loved me over the years.
Okay.
And it's, I think that's what.
Why'd you change? You changed in 2008?
Yeah, I just
became a Republican in 2008. Why?
Right. So there were a lot of issues driving. I mean, as I said before, I'm pro-life, and I think that means more for a legislative. And I know it means more for a legislative than a judicial, because a pro-choice statute could be constitutional. But as supporting the legislative arm, as a Catholic, and seeing what was going to happen, I knew that they were going to have zero pro-lifers soon enough. I could tell that. And so watching like Dan Lipinski, who they felt the need to primary, one of the two last.
So you could see them coming after.
Yeah, they were not going to allow anybody to be pro-life in their party. It was that simple.
So that was a main motivator.
It was a big motivator. I saw them going in the wrong direction on a lot of issues. Economic issues, socialism was, gaining momentum, and there were so many issues that I thought that they were in contrast to what was right. That's the law.
Okay. Somebody may come to you, a case may come to you
right.
with a new law, and then you have to decide. You can't tell me what that's going to be.
Right.
But what you just said now, that's not you deciding. That's what the law is, right?
Totality of the circumstances, making a ruling.
Is that going on now? Do you have an opinion as to, from what you read in the media, what you see in the cases, what you know? Look, you've been practicing law privately for 8 years? Private practitioner.
Right.
You were a
lot more than that.
You were a local prosecutor for state's attorney of,
right.
of Lake County for how many years? 8 years?
8 years.
Assistant Attorney General for 4 years.
Right. Special assistant.
Sheriff for 12 years.
Yeah.
My gosh, you should know this stuff. Some would say really cold, right?
Yeah.
And yet some people say you're not a judge, so you're not qualified to sit on the court. What do you say to them?
Well, we have members of people on the United States Supreme Court right now. We have at least one that was never sat as a judge before being appointed to the United States Supreme Court. We've had a history of that on the United States Supreme Court. The first Justice Marshall was not a judge before he became Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. So we have a long history of people sitting on that have not been judges. Secondly, you're really more you're dealing with two things. One, you're dealing with essentially administrative duties as a justice on the Illinois Supreme Court. And secondly, you're ruling on constitutionality of these issues. And that's not something that trial judges do. I mean, very, very rare are they ruling on what a lower court did.
So
they're not doing they might rule on constitutionality to the extent that they could say whether or not that violates the Fourth Amendment, and therefore we're going to pitch it. But they don't rule to the extent that they're looking at what lower courts have done. And I've studied the Constitution and know it as well as anybody. So I put my experience and my knowledge right there with anyone.
Okay, and so so you're comfortable and confident sitting on the Supreme Court. You can put a lot of these personal views that you've told me about today, which I think are important for people to understand.
Right.
You haven't told me how you'd rule. But you've told me your personal views. You've told me what you know about the law. You told me your background.
Right.
So you don't lack in confidence that if you are elected to the Illinois Supreme Court, you can be impartial.
Right.
And you can have the
taught
background
constitutional
necessary.
law for many years. Absolutely.
Okay. And again, the 5 counties. What are those 5 counties?
Lake, McHenry, Kane, Kendall, and DeKalb.
If they live in those counties and they're registered to vote, they can vote for you.
They can vote for Mark Curran Jr. as the name appears on the ballot, Republican for.
Where do they find out more about you? What website?
We Know Mark. Will direct them as one in Mark for court.
It's easy to remember. We Know Mark.
We Know Mark, and that's the point of that is a lot of what you're asking me. I've already been telling people what I believe about things for, a lot of years, decades now. So there's you're not going to find anyone where they'll get more Google hits on than me. That's for sure.
You don't hide your views.
No.
You'll come back and tell us more detail. You'll come back here before November, right?
Of course. And it's always that caveat, though, that I don't know how I'm going to rule on any issue, and I'm not going down that road right now.
Right.
I don't want to know how I'm going to rule on any issue. I would want to have an open mind and be fair and impartial.
You heard it here, Mark Curran. running for the Illinois Supreme Court, 2nd District. November 8 is the election. So you think about it, you decide what to do. Come back before, because we hope to get Mark back. Maybe we'll have his opponent back, have the other justice, have Justice Michael Burke, who's running in the 3rd. Public Affairs, your source for information. We discuss, you decide.